Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar update on the Envision Needham Center project. I am Tyler Gabrielski, Director of Streets for the town of Needham, and I am joined by the project design team, including our friends at Apex and Tool Design. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this corridor improvement project is a reboot of the downtown redesign efforts that took place in 2017. And included gateway treatments at the town common, as well as some intersection upgrades. But since then, there's been a bit of a change in priorities, both on the town leadership side and what we've heard from residents. And we've heard that folks want us to be more creative and bold in redesigning Great Plain Avenue in an effort to enhance the pedestrian experience, rebalance the infrastructure to allow for safe travel through multiple modes of transportation, and create a vibrant downtown and sense of place to invite people to gather, linger, and patronize local businesses. During this design process, we have held multiple public engagement events like this one, and we will continue to incorporate your feedback into the design priorities as we move forward. Now we have a lot to get through today with a lot of great information, including the traffic analysis that so many have been asking about. So without further ado, I will turn it over to the design team so they can get us started.
Right, great. Thank you, Tyler. My name is Margot Spiller. I'll start us off. So just in terms of the agenda for today, we're just going to give a brief overview of the project goals and objectives for those that haven't been able to attend previous events. Summarizing the feedback we've gotten to date from the community, and then diving into some of the initial results of our traffic diversion analysis. So looking at how a potential reduction in capacity in the center might affect traffic in the center and more globally in Needham. And then talking through next steps, future engagement events, and what to expect in the coming months. So in terms of people presenting to you today, we have Tyler, the Director of Streets and Transportation for the town. Karen Fitzgerald is the Landscape Architecture Lead on the design team from Tool Design. Myself, Margot Spiller, I'm the project manager for the design team. We are also joined with Cassandra Thompson, who's our communications lead, as well as Steve Shikari and Lucy Gibson, who are our traffic experts. All right, so as Tyler already mentioned, this current effort, the Envision Needham Center project, is the culmination of a lot of momentum in the town to really make the center, the infrastructure within the center, reflect the community values of what they want that destination to look like and what users they want it to serve. So this is building upon previous studies as well as the previous construction project that took place in 2017 to really make sure that the center is safe for all users, vibrant and supports the local economy, and is sustainable and resilient. This current project is focused on Great Plain Avenue, stretching from Linden Street on the western side of the project through to Warren Street on the eastern side. Okay, so for this webinar, we are hoping to make this as interactive as possible. And to do that, we are using a website called Menti to have real-time polling throughout the presentation. So you can join in on this polling by either joining the website using the website and code at the top of the page, or using your phone and scanning that QR code in the corner of the page. Now I will turn it over to Karen to talk more about the project goals. Just while Karen's unmuting. So this first poll is looking at what your connection to the center is. So whether you're a resident, an employee, or business owner in Needham, or a resident in a nearby community and just want to see what's going on in Needham Center. Just give a minute or two for each of these polls to make sure folks have the opportunity to put their responses in. Needham residents, also some employees and business owners. We love getting that diverse set of perspectives here. So appreciate you guys tuning in today.
Great. So, pardon me, I got my sound on now. The next question is, what do you love most about Needham Center? And this you can type in your responses right into and you'll see them come up on the screen, creating a word cloud. Restaurants, always the first one. Mm-hmm. Great. This is great feedback. Great, thank you so much. The next slide, interactive slide. Question is, what is one result you would love to see come out of this project? And again, you can type in your responses. Mm-hmm. That's great. More green, walkability, trees and green space, sidewalk cafes. Fantastic. Well, those are fantastic responses. They certainly align with the project goals and objectives that our team is working with for this project. Our number one, safety, mobility, sustainability and resilience, and beautification and placemaking are objectives that all sort of funnel into creating a welcoming and vibrant center for Needham. Increase foot traffic and pedestrian safety is paramount to this project. Next slide. Safety and mobility is really the primary focus or objective here. We will be looking at best practices regarding accessibility, making sure folks of all ages and ability feel safe and comfortable downtown. Also, sorry, thank you. Also, more diverse modes of transportation, such as bikeways and safe bicycle facilities, will be part of the design that we'll be looking at for this area. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Sustainability and resilience, of course, is a interesting and very important part of all of the design work that we do. This includes stormwater management through use of green infrastructure, but also use of green infrastructure for shade and heat island mitigation, and just beautification and habitat accommodation as well downtown. Next slide. Beautification and placemaking, and just talk a little bit about placemaking. Placemaking really brings together all of these, the economic development, the cultural and historic value of Needham, the people and the place is really what that's all about. It really capitalizes on the use, the people who are using it, along with the character of Needham and the culture, while also increasing economic development downtown, bringing people downtown, creating spaces where people like to be and meet their friends and enjoy outdoor dining, or just simply seating and reading a book somewhere. That's sort of what we're talking about when we talk about placemaking. One of the aspects of this project is creating a pilot, and pilot is a demonstration of a concept design that we are working on right now. We helped the town apply for a grant called SS4A, which is Safe Streets for All. And that grant will be used to install pilot elements such as you can see on the right side here, the paint, barriers, planters. It's all temporary. It's a way to test out our concept design and see how it's working for pedestrians, for outdoor dining, for bicyclists, as well as people driving through downtown. We'll use things like barriers to create expanded sidewalk areas, some paint to really kind of make that beautification, placemaking element come through, and also some plantings and planters as well. And this will be up for about a year. And the other thing to keep in mind about the pilot is that when things are not working out, or if we need to adjust, it's possible to do that because of the flexible nature of the materials that we'll be using. So we'll be monitoring it closely, working with the town, and making sure that any adjustments that need to happen will happen throughout the life of the pilot. Next slide, please. These are just some examples of other pilot projects. You can see here planters creating more space on the sidewalks for outdoor dining or seating. Next slide this is a pilot project that Tool Design did for downtown Northampton. And this downtown has quite a large width, but it did have 4 lanes of traffic, just like Needham, and about the same amount of traffic going through. So we were able to use a pilot to really demonstrate to the town and to the folks in Northampton what that would feel like, what that would look like, and how much space they would gain by the final design and construction of a new project. We're now in final design for Northampton. So it's really an exciting project.
Right. Great. Thanks, Karen.
Sure.
So I'm just going to go through some insights we've gotten from engagement to date. As I mentioned, we've had several opportunities to connect with different members of the Needham community over the past few months, and really appreciate you all taking time out of your busy schedules to, talk to the project team about your thoughts and priorities for this project. We're all really excited and passionate about creating infrastructure improvements that are reflective of the community's values and goals. So your input is incredibly valuable to make sure that we're heading in the right direction with the detailed design. So just quickly going through some of our events so far. We first connected with the community in September during the annual Fall Harvest Fair. Our booth at the fair allowed residents to engage with a map of the project area, discuss their observations about existing conditions and concerns, as well as what they'd really like to see in terms of future improvements. We also had boards that allowed for more open-ended feedback about ways to make Great Plain Avenue safer, more vibrant, and more community-oriented. Some of the questions we heard from attendees was clarifying the connection of this project with the previous center project, as well as the timeline and the scope of the current effort. Many of the comments that we received related to the desire for placemaking treatments, as well as improved pedestrian visibility and walkability, and also more green space and dedicated bike facilities. A couple photos from this event. We loved that this was had a lot of youth engagement. We always love talking to younger community members to see how their experience through a certain corridor is as well. More recently, we had a full day open house event early February to dive more into the details about the project goals, trade-offs when making improvements to an area, as well as the upcoming pilot demonstration. Here, participants could stop in any point during the day to have one-on-one conversations with the design team, town staff, as well as members of the working group. And activities included informational boards, opportunities to add your own thoughts about the project goals. We also had a voting exercise to vote for your preferred aesthetic for the center, as well as family-oriented activities like a coloring table. So we estimate about 75 community members joined at some point during the day. The most common types of feedback we received were centered around safety, not only for those walking in the center, but also biking and driving, as well as a desire for placemaking to really make the center feel like more of a vibrant destination. There were also some concerns about the impact of the project on traffic operations, as well as the potential impact on the number of parking spaces in the center. So some quick summaries of feedback here for the goals. People were generally in favor of wider sidewalks and curb extensions at intersections, as well as the potential for the use of horizontal deflection along the roadway, which is a demonstrated way to reduce travel speeds. Some of the negative feedback we received on the use of bike lanes and the reduction in travel lanes was centered on traffic impacts, as well as maintenance considerations, as well as the lack of a existing larger bike network outside of the project limits. Placemaking feedback was largely supportive of seating, whether that be benches or cafe seating for outdoor dining, as well as public art and wayfinding. Feedback for sustainability did indicate support for more robust street trees, as well as the use of permeable materials, as well as other types of landscaping through native species at intersections or in medians. The voting exercise on the feel of Great Plain Ave, the majority of respondents did favor a mix of traditional and modern aesthetics, tying into that historic charm that the center already has, but incorporating more modern elements as appropriate. And here are a couple of photos from that event. Okay, and now I'll turn it over to Cassandra to talk about the walking tours that we did.
Thanks, Margot. So in conjunction with the open house that we offered in February, we actually launched a virtual survey opportunity for the community, which included 2 layers. So the first was on the same day as the open house, we offered 3 guided walking tours where we actually brought community members through 10 designated spots throughout the project parameters. If we can go to the next slide, Margot. Thank you. So you'll see on the top left, at each stop, we had sandwich boards that featured a QR code that allowed people to visit the survey website and provide feedback via multiple poll questions as well as general open response opportunities. And the real goal of this particular layer of engagement was to be able to gather feedback and observations in real time as the community was experiencing and observing that particular area of Great Plain Avenue. Ultimately, we were very pleased to see so many enjoy and involve themselves with this particular activity, and also be willing to provide the feedback that they did. So general feedback we received was a pretty consistent request for improving crossings, specifically ensuring that the pedestrian crossings going across Great Plain Avenue are safer. So we talked a little bit about the potential, and we have received the feedback of, questioning whether or not there should be pedestrian beacons when appropriate, how we might be able to improve crossings through design, including maybe tightening up that span so that pedestrians are not crossing so much. So such a long length across the corridor. In addition to that, we had a number of components of feedback noting concerning driver behavior, a request for reducing speeds, and then general placemaking. So we had asked, what makes this, what could make downtown safer for everyone? Next slide. In addition to that, general open comments, we received many, hundreds upon hundreds. And the general themes that we were able to extract included a loud cry for placemaking to help support and encourage businesses and business diversity specifically. And an additional layer of that request was, outdoor seating, dining opportunities, stopping spaces for individuals or groups of people, general requests for wider sidewalks, making it easier for all to engage and also be safe. So we were extremely appreciative of all who came out to the guided walking tours and the hundreds of participants who participated in the digital survey as well.
And then the last engagement event we're going to talk about is we recently held a webinar through the Charles River Regional Chamber to specifically connect with the Needham business community. There were approximately 40 participants that joined the webinar, including representatives from at least 10 Needham businesses. The priorities of this stakeholder group were very similar to those we heard in previous events, with that desire to make the downtown more vibrant through placemaking and community gathering opportunities, including on-street dining. And then pedestrian safety and increased landscape amenities were also noted. Some concerns that were brought up during this event included the impact of the actual construction of the full build design on businesses, and a desire to remain informed throughout the project timeline of any upcoming changes. There was also understandably questions about how parking spaces would be impacted for their patrons. So that's something that we'll continue to keep them informed on. We asked the business community similar polling questions about what they loved most about Needham Center. You can see restaurants, top response. In addition to restaurants, just the diversity of shops in the area, as well as the town common as a really great feature of the center, and the walkability of the downtown. In terms of what they would like to see come out of the project, answers were centered around infrastructure that did support that vibrant business community, as well as safety and community gathering. All right, so how are we incorporating this feedback into our design and approach? First, just summarizing the feedback to date in terms of the top priorities that we've heard. Again, those slower, safer travel speeds to better support safety and comfort for all modes. As well as really identifying ways to support community gathering in the common. are in the center, through not only seating and benches, but also those different placemaking treatments that Karen had mentioned. The top concerns that we've heard have mainly focused on the impact of slower travel speeds and a reallocation of space on traffic queuing through the center, which is why this webinar is focused on the traffic analysis that we're performing, as well as impacts of parking. And then in terms of requests from the community, folks want to be involved. They want to know what's going on through getting constant communication from the town and the project team, as well as having continuous opportunities to provide their feedback throughout the design timeline. One other thing that came up is the desire for a more robust wayfinding design through the center, not only during the pilot demonstration, but as part of the actual full design. So how we're incorporating this feedback, ways that we're looking to support slower travel speeds is through reducing the amount of pavement in the center. If there's a wide, expansive roadway, drivers will inherently travel more quickly because they're comfortable doing so. So reducing pavement not only in the typical section throughout the corridor, but also looking at ways to make each intersection a little more confined feeling. As I mentioned, we're also looking into the use of horizontal shifts, also called chicanes, just as an added layer of traffic calming. In terms of gathering opportunities, that reduction in pavement does inherently lend itself to more opportunities for other uses. So community gathering areas. So we'd be looking at that both at intersections as well as having a consistent width along Great Plain Avenue that could serve as an amenity zone for trees, benches, outdoor dining, decorative lighting, that sort of thing. And then for placemaking, we are really excited to incorporate public art into not only the final design, but also the pilot demonstration. We're looking at opportunities for landscaping through trees as well as native plantings, and we are looking into different material selections to really make the center feel like a special destination. In terms of concerns, we have heard your concern about traffic queuing, which is really why the design team is doing their due diligence to try to understand what the potential implications of reducing the number of travel lanes will be. One of the best ways to understand this is through the pilot demonstration, really being able to test out a new layout before shovels are in the ground. But we also are able to use very robust data sets to predict what we think the traffic impacts will be even before the pilot is in place, which is what the team will be talking about today. Also wanted to note that the town is already going through the effort of making the signal systems in the center more efficient through a bottleneck improvement project, just making sure that those two signals, because they are very close to each other at Highland and Chestnut, they are speaking to each other and making sure that vehicular traffic is processed through those two intersections as efficiently as possible. In terms of parking, we are looking at, mitigating the impact of the design on parking by potentially shifting current on-street parking on Great Plain Avenue to adjacent side streets like Highland and Chestnut or Chapel, as well as making sure that the public parking that is available but might not be easy to find, there's adequate wayfinding to make sure people know that that's there. And we are also looking at different alternatives that have different degrees of parking impacts, and we'll be presenting that to the community so that they can give their input on what level of trade-off they're comfortable with. And finally, in terms of communication feedback, we have set up a number of communication channels for the project. There is a town website for the project, as well as a story map website that you can find on the town website to be constantly in the loop about what is going on and what's the latest. We will always provide summaries of engagement we've done to date, as well as upcoming opportunities to give your feedback. All right. So with that summary, wanted to just take a minute to see if there were any priorities or concerns that you have that we have not mentioned so far. A few more seconds, make sure. All right, great. And if you think of anything after this conversation, you can bring it up during the Q&A at the end, or, reach out to the town. Bike lanes elsewhere, that's a great comment. Tyler can touch on that at the end of the webinar, but I know the town is, has several other bike projects in the work, including the Highland Ave tip project that's directly abuts the project limits. Traffic, parking. Just wanted to speak to the pilot during the summer. So as Karen mentioned, the pilot will be at least 12 months long. We think it's really important to understand the implications of a new layout in every season. But performing a pilot in the summer will give us the best opportunity to experience the benefits of new community gathering spaces. When the weather's nice, people want to be outside. So we do feel like that's an important season to experience the change during. All right, appreciate all the feedback. We're going to keep this moving. All right, so just a sneak peek at what we're looking at for design alternatives. This section is for the portion of Great Plain Avenue right in front of the town common. You can see in the existing condition, there's 4 travel lanes and parking on both sides, which adds to about 62 feet of pavement. There are sidewalks on both sides. They're pretty narrow, about 8 feet, not including that bollard area. So 2 alternatives that we're looking into. The first one, you can see the amount of pavement is reduced by having 2 travel lanes as well as 1 lane of parking. This allows us to have sidewalk level bicycle lanes on either side of the street, as well as wider sidewalks, which are now 12 to 16 feet on either side, as well as I mentioned that consistent amenity zone on either side of the roadway. So you can see there is space for trees, lighting, as well as benches. We liked that in this design, there is that physical separation between those that would be biking and those that are walking. So that there are fewer opportunities for conflicts between travel modes. The second alternative is quite similar, but you can see the location of the bicycle lane and that amenity zone is switched. So the street trees are closer to the roadway, which does give that benefit of a more visual narrowing of the roadway corridor. And then the bicycle lane and the sidewalk are still clearly delineated by the use of a 2-foot buffer that's a textured material, so that folks can very easily see, the limits of each area. These are both conceptual, and we will give an opportunity in late April, early May to really dive into the alternatives we're considering and allow you to give additional feedback on specific alternatives. All right, with that, we're going to turn to the traffic analysis. We have a couple more polls, and I'll turn it over to the traffic team. All right. So first, how would you currently characterize your trips through Needham Center? Either the center being a destination at the end of your trip, or something you pass through to either a destination in town or somewhere else in the region. a lot of trips to Needham Center, but pretty good mix of all options. Just give it a few more seconds for people to chime in. All right, and then we have one more poll before I turn it over to Steve. Okay, so how much would you agree with each of the following statements? And this ranges from strongly agree to strongly disagree. A good representation of opinions here, which we appreciate hearing. Two more minutes. Still see some results coming in. All right, great. Thank you so much. All right, I will turn it over to Steve now to dive more into the traffic analysis.
Thanks, Margot. Yes, as we all know, this project involves reallocating the space that's currently used by motorists and giving it to other uses such as pedestrians, bikes, and streetscape by reducing the travel lanes to one lane in each direction, or a notion of a road diet. And of course, when there's talks about reducing the number of travel lanes, we always need to consider the implications of traffic, not just within the center, but also on the surrounding roadway network as well. So we performed a traffic diversion analysis to estimate the degree of the traffic diversion, how much traffic will seek alternate routes from center, and also to anticipate the locations that might need some sort of mitigation in terms of safety or operations during the pilot, and also identify the locations that need to be monitored for further traffic data collection before and during the pilot. With pilot in place, we can validate and test out our methodology and fine-tune it for the future long-term design. So on this slide, the graphics are fairly similar to what Margot presented in further detail, but by comparing the existing roadway configuration with 2 lanes in each direction against what a typical reimagined transformed roadway might look like, with 1 lane in each direction of travel lane and the rest of the spaces given to other uses, pedestrians, bikes, and streetscape. So looking at the bigger picture, as you're all aware, Great Plain Avenue and other roadways that connect to the center area have mostly 1 lane in each direction outside the center for the most part. And it's interesting that it's only close to the center that we have multiple lanes approaching each of the intersections. And this is a typical block at Great Plain Avenue at Webster Street, the signalized intersection that currently operates with all the roadways approaching it having 1 lane in each direction. For us to perform our analyses, we made some assumptions. On this slide, you can see the existing lane configuration on each of the intersection approaches at the center. And what we assumed was that all the approaches to these 2 intersections will be reduced to 1 lane, with the exception of Chestnut Street, for two reasons. In our initial evaluations, we thought Chestnut could remain at its current lane configuration with one through and right lane and one exclusive left turn lane, because there is the fire station right down the street, and we anticipated that this approach might be frequently used by emergency vehicles, and we wanted to minimize the impacts to this approach for the emergency response times. And also in the traffic count data that we collected, we realized that the left turn out of Chestnut Street going west onto Great Plain Avenue is one of the heaviest of all the left turning maneuvers. And reducing that or like combining that to one lane on that approach could induce some additional diverted traffic, which may not have an easy alternate route to use. The other assumption we made was that at these two signalized intersections, the timing of the pedestrian phases is exclusive to them, meaning that when a pedestrian pushes the button, all the motorists will stop and the pedestrian has time to cross the street. And after that, the vehicles get a green light and they can use the intersection. We also assume that any traffic that is over capacity at any of these intersections will seek alternate route. By over capacity, I mean every intersection, depending on how much green light is given to any of the approaches, can handle a number of vehicles during each green phase. And if there are more cars that need to use that approach during that green phase, they will be left over for the next time. And they will eventually find an alternate route that might be more convenient to get to their destination. In our analysis, we also assume that the longer trips, longer commuting trips will be diverted to regional highways, whereas the shorter trips, the more local trips, will find an alternate route within the town itself through other local streets. We also know that when people find an easier way to get to their destination, they might change their mode of travel. They might use biking or walking, but for our evaluations to remain conservative, we assume that that change in behavior, or mode shift as we call it, does not happen. This results in a more conservative analysis. We took a three-step process during our evaluations. We first estimated how many trips will be diverted from Needham Center to the surrounding roadway network. And then we identified the routes that these diverted trips might travel on. And then we determined what locations might be potentially impacted within the surrounding network for further monitoring and additional data collection during the pilot demonstration. The first step of the process, estimating the diverted traffic. So on this slide, this graph shows the volume fluctuations, the traffic volume fluctuations throughout the course of a day. On the vertical axis, there are the number of vehicles per hour. And on the horizontal axis, there's the time of the day. And the dark line shows the traffic volume on the westbound direction, and the lighter line shows traffic volume on the eastbound direction. Well, we focused our analyses on the peak periods as it's boxed in on this graph. With the typical commuting peak period falls in the morning between 7 to 9 a.m. and for the evening between the 4 to 6 p.m. And as we see with all these fluctuations, when we found our results, there are some traffic that will be diverted during these peak hours, but it's very well expected that for most of the hours of the day, even with the reduced number of travel lanes, the intersections and the town center can handle the traffic without inducing any diverted traffic to other roadways. And this image shows the number of diverted trips during the course of an hour, with the orange circle showing the volumes during the morning peak hour between 7:45 to 8:45 a.m. That was our analysis period. And the green ones showing for the PM peak hour between 5 to 6 p.m. And as you can see, the highest, the approach that is anticipated to experience the highest diverted volume is Great Plain Avenue eastbound during the morning peak hour. And that's 73 vehicles during the course of an hour, which translates into only one vehicle every 50 seconds. And with that, I hand it over to Lucy.
Thank you, Steve. I worked with the team on taking this analysis further and really thinking about what will happen to these trips that we expect to be diverted away from Needham Center with the proposed project. One of the things that, well, here's a graphic that shows what we know from a lot of projects throughout the country and all around the Boston area that change roadway capacity. There's a lot of different ways that people can adapt and change their behavior to adapt to the new conditions. What we'd expect, particularly in the short term, when we're thinking about a demonstration project going into the ground, we will expect a certain number of people to take a different route to basically avoid Needham Center. Obviously, people who are going into Needham Center on purpose will continue that, but a lot of trips are going from somewhere east of Needham to somewhere west of Needham and don't really have any business in the center. So we'd expect those trips would be diverted around the center. Other ways people adapt might be time shift. They might make their trip earlier or later. And then over a longer time, we'd see things like a mode change. What would love to see for this project is more people walking and biking and maybe taking transit into Needham Center so they don't need to bring their car and find a place to park. In any case, there's a lot of different ways people adapt and, a lot of complex behavior that we're making some assumptions to understand the potential future. So here's one example of a long commute that we have been learning through our data analysis is a fair amount of traffic through Needham Center. So in this case, it's someone going from Northborough to Dedham, commuting through Needham Center. That's about a 32-mile trip. But what you can see on the charts, this is just a Google Maps looking at the morning peak hour. There are a lot of alternative routes that people can take to avoid Needham Center that are about the same amount of time. So when we look at who might be diverting around Needham Center in the future conditions, the people who are making the longer trips really have the more options to take other routes, and we'd expect them to take advantage of it. So how did we determine what other routes people might take? We used the Replica data platform. This is transportation data that uses cell phone data, calibrated with traffic counts and population economic data to give us much more insight on where trips are starting from and ending that are passing through Needham Center. And this data is really useful for us to understand how things might change. We also use just Google mapping, knowing that's a common thing that many drivers use to rely on, finding the optimal route. So we understand what are the optional routes that people have when things might change in Needham Center. And then we're estimating how much traffic might divert onto some of the local streets around Needham Center. And one of the reasons we want to understand that is so that we can do counts before and during the demonstration project. So we really understand, our problems arising from the demonstration and where are people going, how are they adapting. This is some of the data that we get from the Replica platform for trips going through Needham Center in the morning peak hour. Some of the data shows us that in the morning peak hour, a big percent, more than half, are commuting trips, and then fewer trips of other purposes, school and whatnot. We also see that a lot of these trips are quite long. 28% of the trips are longer than 32 miles. and another 32% are between 16 and 32 miles. These are long here. This data frankly surprised us to see how, people are going from a long way on either side of Needham, but using Needham Center as basically a cut through rather than taking other routes. So once we have an understanding of the number of diverted trips that Steve mentioned, and then understanding where are the people going, so what are the routes, we want to determine the other locations around Needham Center that might be affected, and again to plan for traffic data collection. So this chart shows us some data on what's the amount of those long commute trips, the 32-mile and longer trips going on each of the legs coming into Needham Center that will be affected by diversion, compared to the amount of diversion we'd expect to be happen because of the reduced capacity. So the dark blue lines on this chart are the percentage of trips on that approach that are over 32 miles. Again, those are the trips that have the easiest way and most options to adapt to take a different route. And so you can see on Dedham Avenue, for example, the over 25% of the trips are over 32 miles, and the amount of diverted trips are between 10 and 15 miles in the AM and PM peak hour. So we'd expect that diversion of long trips to more than cover the reduction in volume that we will be seeing in the PROS demonstration project. The one different result is on Highland Avenue. Highland Avenue has a much smaller percent of long trips. It's much more of a local street serving travel in and around Needham. So on Highland Avenue, we would see some diversion onto local streets that currently use Highland. So those are examples of how we actually mapped out, what are the diversion routes and how would it be affected. So the other thing we took a look at, these set of slides here, we can flip through them just to get an idea of if we did see more local diversion, which we don't expect a lot of, but which of the intersections would be affected. And so we can really gauge where should we be collecting data and looking out for, potential issues with diverted traffic. So these are all the different routes that we expect. We also want to pay a lot of attention to where schools are, because we know that school traffic during the peak hour, a lot of people are destined to the school to drop off kids. And that's a scene of a lot of activity and a lot of walking. We want to make sure we're avoiding impacts, particularly around schools. So considering all this data, we proposed a number of count locations that we would be counting traffic both before the demonstration project goes in and then during the demonstration project. So we can really compare what are the conditions and how are people adapting to the change. And that will help understand and take the design further. So.
Right. Great. Thank you, Lucy. Just to wrap us up, talking through next steps. So we will have an upcoming engagement event in the near future in about a month to talk through the conceptual design as well as the potential pilot design in more detail. But after that, the next big milestone of this project is installing the pilot demonstration. We are looking to have that installed sometime during the summer this year, likely after 4th of July, given the big event in the center. That, as I mentioned, really gives us the opportunity to see the benefits of a reallocated space within the public realm. And it also allows us to install the pilot while traffic is lighter and we don't have that school traffic. So if we install it in July or August, we can, tweak it as needed based on how traffic is operating, and then be in a great spot for September when that school traffic is back in session. So we really feel like the pilot demonstration is a great opportunity for the community to see firsthand the impacts of a changed layout in terms of, how repurposed space could be utilized, as well as, how dedicated bicycle facilities and shorter pedestrian crossings will feel as a user in the space. In terms of ways to stay connected, as I mentioned, we have the project website set up, which is linked here. You can also scan this QR code, which will take you to the story map site where you can sign up for direct project communications. Both websites and future communications will give more details about upcoming engagement events. But if you have specific questions in the meantime, you can contact Tyler. His contact information is provided here. And with that, we'll open it up to any questions you guys have.
Okay, so I've been monitoring questions throughout. There are a few that I'm kind of combining into a few groups. So we will start out. First question. Participant asked, how will we know that feedback provided was considered?
So I'll start us off. I'm sure a couple folks want to chime in, but we are being very very conscious of summarizing the feedback we receive in each event and being very transparent about what that feedback is. So you can clearly see that the options that we come up with provide a range of alternatives for the community to consider. And we will continue to kind of tweak the design moving forward based on the feedback that we continue to receive.
Yeah, we should also mention the working group that we have been working with the town. There are several members on a working group from people who work and live in Needham. So they're really guiding us, and we share all of our input and public feedback with them as we roll through each of the phases of the project.
Yeah, and the great point, Karen. The working group members include Needham residents, town meeting members, select board members, business community members. So it is a pretty broad stakeholder representation.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Thank you. Next question. Who are decision makers for this project? Will the community get a say and or vote? And if we can just review how this is being funded.
Sure. Tyler, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so the working group that was just mentioned is kind of the best vehicle to have that to sort of present them with the feedback that we're getting at these public engagement events, and then using their local knowledge and their connections with other groups in town to be the decision makers as we move forward through the design process. So as the team mentioned, there are representatives from businesses in town, residents that are involved with different committees in town, such as the Design Review Board, and they also have connections with the Transportation Safety Committee and Mobility Committee. So these are all those representatives, including representatives from the town, from DPW, and Town Hall. We're being presented with some of the alternatives that you saw earlier in this webinar, and we're using that feedback as and the sounding board of that working group to determine how we move forward with which alternatives we use, what individual design features will be incorporated as we move forward through the project. In terms of funding, there's we're still early on in the process. We're still implementing, or we're still doing the design for this project. So the exact figure for what funding will be needed is going to be dependent on which features end up in the final design and get incorporated or removed. So it is likely that it will be funded through a combination of grant funds from the state level and potentially the federal level, as well as local funds that will be approved, or they'll be discussed at town meeting for appropriation. So that's another sort of layer of resident discussion and feedback and approval that will be required in order to kind of create our funding stack for this project. So it's not going to be entirely, we wouldn't anticipate that it'll be entirely funded through town appropriation, because it's a great candidate for some of the grants that the state offers, and that we apply for through DPW.
Beautiful. Thank you. Follow up to the question of decision makers and specifically the working group. I just want to know, and I shared the direct link with the participants who asked about this, but the working group breakdown can actually be found on the town's website under the working group tab. So you can actually see all members who participate in that. Next question series is regarding foot traffic safety. So the question is, will this project be addressing the current pitch of the sidewalks on the north side of Great Plain Avenue? Right now the comment is right now it is dangerous and difficult for those with mobility issues.
Mm. Yeah, the project throughout the entire project area will be following the ADA regulations for accessibility, including the newer called PROAG regulations that have come out pretty much last year. So we'll be very conscious about making sure that all of the sidewalk pedestrian areas follow those regulations, which stipulate cross pitch, ramps and materials as well to make sure it's a nice, smooth and accessible walking surface for everyone.
Beautiful. I also just want to add that during the guided walking tours, that was actually something that was heavily discussed and noted and expressed as a concern. So we've received that feedback in the past as well. So thank you for bringing that up again. The next kind of grouping of questions is in regards to general traffic and congestion concerns. So there are a few, I'll ask them individually though. So first question regarding traffic and congestion. When the all-way red light occurs on Chapel and Great Plain Avenue, traffic backs up in all directions. Will this be looked at, or is it being looked at? And if so, are there anticipated changes to address?
Yes. So as we know, as we discussed, so the functional area of the intersection will be reduced, and the number of lanes approaching each of the intersections will also be reduced, and therefore the length of the crossings. Under the future design, that's one of the benefits actually that having less number of travel lanes approaching an intersection might have, is that pedestrians don't need as long of a walk time to cross the street. So we anticipate that under the future conditions, we'll have a much shorter exclusive pedestrian timing needed to cross. And likewise, the vehicles will be stopped for a shorter amount of time.
Beautiful. Thank you, Steve. I think it may also be worthwhile to re-mention that the town is currently working on a bottleneck project, which ideally should help sort of ensure that traffic is flowing as smoothly as it can.
Yeah, if I can just comment on that real quick.
Yeah.
So the bottleneck project, that's a grant that was awarded from the state to, in our case, make some upgrades at for the traffic signals to enhance their ability to detect and adapt to the traffic conditions as it is now, the detection is not current with current standards, and the part of the project involves the coordination of those signals to better ameliorate some of the traffic queuing that happens, especially as it relates to the train crossing and the signal there. So that's also something that we're working on and to be implemented this summer as well. So there's regardless of what happens with this project, those improvements are going to be made, and they will work to serve this project either way, because the detection technology is, is going to be applicable to this new configuration as well.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tyler. Next question regarding traffic concerns and congestion. There are additionally a couple of intersections within the project limits and just outside of the project limits that experience backup at different times of day. Are there currently, or will there be any action to address these? I think this definitely has some overlap for the question that was just asked, but I'm not sure if we want to address outside of the project limits.
So,
Sorry,
go ahead, Steve.
No,
you
go
go
ahead.
first.
So I was going to say, outside of the project limits, we haven't specifically looked at them, but having the pilot is actually really helpful in us understanding where those areas are and identifying a mitigation for the long term.
Yeah, I'll just add that a related project to this project is that the Highland Ave roadway improvements project, and that project includes intersection upgrades all along the corridor from Great Plain Avenue all the way up to Webster Street. So that is kind of a mega intersection project as well as a roadway improvements project. And then we also have we've had consultants do impact analysis for level of service at intersections across town as part of the MBTA communities research that was done. So we have analysis, and we've identified issues and opportunities for upgrades at many intersections outside of the project limits as well.
Beautiful. Thank you. Next question regarding traffic concerns and congestion. Are the associated time impacts to each of the different alternative methods and routes planned? Will they be determined during the demo or monitored during the demo?
So the way we envision this would work is that we come up with an initial traffic signal timing, and then as the pilot runs, after a while, while people adjust to it, we'll go back out there and observe and see if there are any areas that could be improved by changing the signal timing. We'll plan to make changes and modifications during the pilot.
And an additional final congestion and traffic concern related question. I'm going to do this in kind of two parts. One, there's just been expressed concern about traffic diverting through residential streets. So I think it might be helpful to talk a little bit about, that as much as we can. And also a pointed question of whether there is a way to specifically deter or disallow vehicular traffic from diverting to certain streets, specifically called out in connection with what Lucy was talking about and has focused on, is attempting to disallow or deter additional cut-through traffic on streets that lead to schools. Let me see. Oh,
I think this
Oh.
might be a better question for Lucy.
yeah.
Okay, I'm happy to. So one of the reasons why we're going to spend considerable effort doing a lot of traffic counts on the local streets, and I want to go back to our expectation is that we shouldn't see much diversion because we have so many long commutes, and we expect most of this diversion will take place with long distance commuters just taking other highway routes and not really ending up on Needham's local streets. However, we're share those concerns and want to really understand what happens during the pilot. And then there's a lot of things that could be done to mitigate any safety problems that those have. It could range from, closing streets or making them one way or doing traffic calming through measures like speed humps or other things that would really make those streets, any cut through traffic that does use them would have to go very slowly and it would really discourage that kind of use. So there's a lot of ways to manage how traffic uses the streets, and then a lot of things could be done to mitigate safety concerns. And there may be, need for more stop signs or a roundabout or mini roundabout, things like that, that can also address things that negative impacts that might happen.
Yeah, just to build on that, Lucy, like I want to underscore what Lucy said about we're not anticipating significant diversion onto local streets. I think that might be a misperception that people have. Ultimately, we're also not talking about low volume residential streets where you're not going to see traffic. We wouldn't anticipate seeing traffic diverted down into your residential streets. The diversion that is anticipated is along those sort of collector routes that encircle the town and kind of provide access through the less residential areas. So we wouldn't anticipate significant diversion onto your quiet neighborhood street. So that's something that I really want to underscore here and emphasize.
Beautiful. Thank you both. All right, shifting gears slightly. We have a question regarding the category of utilities. So the specific question notes, or the participant notes that there are no telephone poles in the immediate center, and asks if this infrastructure is buried, and if so, could the entire zone eliminate telephone poles? Can streetlights be done and addressed the same way? So I think that's mostly a Tyler question, and then in conjunction with the design team.
So it's important to remember that the project limits are the project limits. We're not ripping up the entire town here with this project. So, we'll a portion of this project, it's a significant piece of it, is the underlying utilities and how to make the not just sort of dealing with the impacts to those existing systems, but also how we can improve them to make them more resilient. We've had a lot of questions over, in recent years about stormwater and drainage. Those are all things that will be, it's an opportunity with this project to address some improvements that can be made, again, within the project limits. But future projects, the town is very conscious of utilities and utilities management, and every project that we do going forward will incorporate those same considerations and opportunities for improvements to be made to the existing utility infrastructure. The pole issue is something that it's in coordination with a third party, with Verizon mainly. So I think some people think that the town owns the poles and determines where they go or how they work, and unfortunately that's not the case. But we do work with the utility to see if we can relocate or make them work work better for the kinds of projects that we're working on in the roadway.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tyler. I'm not sure. I don't think. Yeah, I think that answers it. Okay, next sort of category of questions is regarding arguably the most exciting components of this project, which is just questions regarding the general feel and design, specifically, expressing concerns of wanting to protect and amplify the existing or historic charm of the center, and so we have some participants just asking about the approach to that and what that may actually look like.
Mhm. I think that's a placemaking question. Yeah, definitely we will be working with the public, the town, our working group on, what is the identity of Needham, and would be selecting materials and items to reflect that character. As we move into those phases of more detailed design, there will be opportunities to weigh in on material selection and general like look and feel of the downtown. So staying in touch with the project is important if you'd like to weigh in on those choices. But yeah, placemaking is all about the place and the people and what that looks like and feels like for those folks who live in Needham. So we would be very much centered around making sure that that is incorporated into the project. There's all kinds of choices to be made, and from paving to lighting to plant material to just outdoor art. So it is the most exciting part of the project. I have to
For
agree with
sure.
you, Cassandra.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank
Another
you.
thing to add on that is that there is a representative from the design review board on the working group, as well as a member of the select board that so it will be a very purposeful process as to the look and feel of the project to make sure it's consistent with sort of the character and identity of the town.
Yeah. The next question is in regards to parking. So I'm again kind of merging a few within the same question. So specific pointed questions regarding parking. First is, has there been consideration that adding parking to the perimeter or surrounding or adjacent streets or areas to encourage pedestrians or foot traffic to park, outside of that immediate corridor and travel on foot or other modes? And I think we'll start there.
Yeah, I'll kick us off. So we are, again, very early in the conceptual design process, but we are looking at opportunities to repurpose existing pavement from a travel lane to a parking lane, specifically on, Dedham or Highland, which are directly adjacent to the project limits, but not actually within them. So not that I'm saying there will be a net zero parking change specifically, but we understand that any little bit can help. So we are investigating that and plan to provide more details in the near future.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Another thing I just want to mention is the parking study that was done recently in the last few years had some suggestions for how to better activate the parking that we already have in the downtown, and provide better wayfinding and to encourage utilization of the existing parking that we have. So that's something that we're working on in parallel with this project as well, because the study indicated that there is inventory there, we just need to do a better job of encouraging people to use it. And everyone that has the ability to park in those existing lots and the existing inventory is another car that's not on the street.
Beautiful. Thank you. Modes of transportation, the next category. Regarding bikes, we have a kind of two-tiered combined question. General question regarding why there is a priority to add bike lanes, where that's stemming from. So I think maybe talking about some of those previous studies and outreach events might be, or outreach initiatives might be helpful. And then a follow-up question is regarding projected bike lanes outside of the project limits and potential, network.
Sure, I'll start us off. I mean, actually, Cassandra, if you just want to touch on the walking tour comments, because I know there were several walking tours where there are bicyclists in the center and they're now just using the sidewalk. So
yeah, definitely thanks. So one of the things that was consistently discussed in all of the walking tours by multiple people was the fact that many cyclists are already utilizing the project limits. And even though there are some markers to suggest that cyclists should use, the street, the side of the street, if you will, to bike, that because they do not feel safe doing so and they are not the most ideal circumstances and accommodations, that instead what happens is on the currently quite narrow sidewalks, you have people on bikes. Mostly the concerns / complaints heard were regarding children after school or during the weekends utilizing the sidewalks and additionally parking their bikes or arguably just dropping their bikes on the sidewalk, causing some significant safety concerns as well as just, general dislike for how it looks or how a pedestrian may have to navigate it. So I think that alone, those expressed experiences and observations alone start to make the strong argument for why this is important. But I know that the town has also done significant due diligence in the past to really kind of tap into the community and ask, is this an important thing? So.
yeah, and I think one of the most consistent pieces of feedback we've gotten to date is that folks really want the center to be a people-oriented place, and those on their bikes are part of that equation. They are people that are using the center, and I think we can all agree having the center feel like a family-friendly destination is, a value that is important. So making sure that children are able to access the center with their parents safely or after school is something that we would like to support. I think having a separate space for each mode, as Cassandra mentioned, does just avoid conflicts, whether it's involving a vehicle or between a pedestrian and bicyclist, and just makes everyone feel more comfortable. In terms of, having this be part of a larger bicycle network, as Needham Center, as, the name suggests, this is a hub of the community, and, having bicycle lanes here is a great node to build off of, and the town is actively, pursuing ways to connect to potential bike lanes in this location.
Yeah, if I can speak to that too. The thing to remember with the bike lanes is it's as much a safety improvement as it is an access improvement. When you have cyclists now going in and out of traffic or being in unpredictable places, that's a danger not only to the cyclists but also to drivers too. Having to be really aware of your surroundings and be looking out at all times. The more we can have each mode in its place in its own dedicated facility, that's something that is going to take some of that risk out of the equation, and people are in a more predictable spot, so that you're not, your head on a swivel looking, being careful to avoid unexpected cyclists. The other thing with the bike network, the recently created mobility committee in town was tasked by the select board with creating a plan for a bike network map that will be used to guide DPW projects going forward to determine where makes the most sense for there to be dedicated bike lanes. How can they facilitate travel from point to point across town? So um, we're not intending to put bike lanes on every street, but there are on the main roads in town. There's that Great Plain Avenue and Highland Avenue. These are sort of the central spine of the town. And they also tend to have the highest vehicular activity. So it makes the most sense to create access points and dedicated bike lanes through those main spine areas. So that's something that the mobility committee has been working on, and where it's a select board priority. So that's where this stuff is. A lot of it is coming from as well.
Beautiful. Thank you all. Next question is regarding, or next group of questions is regarding specifically buses and bus stops. So a direct and pointed question asking if this project impacts or alters the bus routes or stops at all. And additionally, if there's any additional considerations for, adding bus stops, which I think is certainly more of a town initiative than a project-specific initiative.
So the bus stops are not town infrastructure in the sense that we determine where they go and how to add them or where to add them. It's something that's done in conjunction with MBTA, and we kind of act more in a support role in that decision making. I don't think we would anticipate the project significantly impacting the bus stops that exist in the area as it stands. But the traffic of, the movement patterns of bus traffic are going to be incorporated in our general observations about traffic moving through the corridor, through the pilot phase and beyond. So it's certainly something that we would be keeping an eye on to make sure that there isn't significant congestion that affects the bus operations.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm just going through. I want to make sure that we touch upon all or as much as possible. So there are a number of direct questions regarding that can be summarized into the category of general intent. And so if I may, I think it might be useful to just talk a little bit about the community benefits of projects like this. So whether it's the economic impacts, the general health and wellness, hopefully impacts on the community from that perspective, the social impacts that projects like this can make on a community. So I think that's sort of involves all of these minds here on the panelists a bit, but I think it'd be really nice to speak a little to that, if we could.
Okay, anyone
I
kick
can
us off?
guess.
Yeah, either way.
So, the we love the downtown. I think we all, we appreciate all the businesses and the the common. These are great resources for downtown. However, there is such a great opportunity to build something even better and to bring in more investment, more visitors and activity to the downtown, um, and build and have something that people go out of their way to visit rather than go through on their way somewhere else. That's I think kind of the main idea of this whole thing, is that, you know, there a lot of the comments that we've heard over the years, people ask us about what types of different businesses they would like to see in the downtown. We can't dictate that on a individual level, but one thing we can do is create an attractive business environment with a lot of foot traffic and a lot of people that are lingering, sort of coming in and out of shops, rather than making a dinner reservation and going to that one location, parking, having your dinner, and then going home. We want something that's going to be an experience for people to walk around, see what Needham has to offer, not even just for, the benefit of Needham residents, but also um, people in the surrounding municipalities that may, be looking for something to do on a Friday night, and there's all this great activity and stuff going on in the center. So in order to make that happen, this project is a piece of that larger effort to create an attractive place um, for business investment, for visitors. So this is one of the ways that we can do that, by sort of rebalancing the scales a bit away from just how can we get as many cars through this place as we can. Because that's not how you build a downtown that everybody wants to be in.
Yeah, I think Karen mentioned this sometime and it really stuck with me of, brick and mortar businesses are never going to be the most convenient option anymore. Like people can order something on Amazon or get takeout if they are looking for a convenient option. But you look at these retail spaces like the Chestnut Hill area or Legacy Place that are always full, like they're packed, and people will be willing to park at the very end of a parking lot and walk all the way to, probably more than a quarter of a mile to go to an ice cream store and sit outside because it's an experience and it's an activity and it's not about convenience. It's about having a nice experience. So I think that's what we're really looking to create here is a place that is a true destination and people just want to go and experience. So
Yeah, beautiful. I just also want to add, just as a note, I think one of the unexpected arguments being made in projects and designs of this nature is addressing the relationship between multiple modes of transportation. So addressing the relationship between pedestrians and cyclists, or cyclists and vehicles, or vehicles and pedestrians. And so that's actually why the mobility and safety aspect is like, there's a reason that was the first key component that we mentioned. We really are being very intentional about looking at what those relationships are and ensuring that they are as safe and communal as they really can be, because that is in the benefit of the Needham community. All right.
Cassandra, have we hit on most of the general topics there in the Q&A?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. All right. I want to thank everybody for attending. We went over a lot of information. There's going to be many more opportunities for feedback, and you all can feel free to message me directly, to give me your comments, your questions, and I can work with the design team to get those answered for you. And then look out for, as Margot indicated, look out for updates on the project webpage. And there's going to be, future events where you can come and make yourself heard. So I just want to thank the project team for putting this presentation together. I think there's a lot of questions that we're seeking to answer here, and I think we did a pretty good job of covering a lot of material. So stay tuned for more to come, and have a good rest of your weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.